Oyemi Ajayi, many thanks to you for the background report on reforming the discourse. We have here in the studio for our conversation, let me quickly introduce Uket Ugbonga. Uket Ugbonga is Executive Secretary, Power Consumers Advocates of Nigeria, National Secretary, Network for Electricity Consumers Advocacy of Nigeria, NECAN and PCAN. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And good morning, Nigerians.
And also joining us from our Kaduna studio, we have Idris Mohammed. He is a power infrastructure expert and former MD CEO, Kaduna Electric. We thank you. Thank you for joining us from Kaduna.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, good morning to you, Mr. Mohammed. Now, joining us via Zoom from Ijebu-Ode is Bode Fadipe. Bode Fadipe is the CEO, Sage Consultant and Communications. Mr. Fadipe, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right. Also joining us from our Kano studio is Engineer Abdurrahman Umar Lawan, PhD, Senior Academic Department of Electrical and Senior Fellow, Center for Renewable Energy and Sustainable Transitions Energy Policy Advocate and Technical Consultant. You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Good morning. Okay, let's just kickstart our conversation from our Kaduna studio, where we have Idris Mohammed. Mr. Mohammed, can you just give us what exactly is the challenge, or what challenge do we have with our discos? Tell us, what reforms do the disco actually need for efficiency?
Good morning, Nigeria. Thank you for having me. That background report by NTA is certainly a very good one, and it summarizes the actual position of the power sector in Nigeria, especially the distribution aspect that is so worrisome. What I would say is that from the start, when privatization was implemented, the basic rule which everyone signed for, that is the new owners, were not strictly kept in strict compliance. So we missed the point from the take-off point. Privatization is quite an excellent principle of business, of ensuring that utilities work. And the concept that was introduced in Nigeria was a good one. But then what about the players? The players who are responsible for implementing those concepts are the same people that are responsible for the failures of the Nigerian distribution network. I remembered very well before privatization, the DISCOs were returning a cash collection performance of probably in some distribution companies like Eco, Ikeja, are returning a collection performance of 80%. And up to the time that privatization took place, because they retained some of those eggheads in the power holding company, the performance kept inching up from that moment. But I think, like any other thing in Nigeria, owners change, and each time there is a change in ownership in the distribution company, it means also the strategic goalposts will change, because the concept and then the idea of the new owners will not be the same as those of the owners who just vacated the scene. And because of that, all those issues that have bedeviled the effective, smooth improvement in distribution supplies of electricity became hampered. And the government on its own part, when the privatization was done, had said, and the new owners were told, that in order for you to succeed, you would certainly need to retain your workforce for a number of time to support you, guide you through the process so that you can succeed. But that didn't happen. When the new owners came, they threw away a largest chunk of the distribution technical competent staff who knew every aspect of the business. And because they threw away those very huge number of employees, means that they will be managing a network that they are hardly competent to handle. The unfortunate part of throwing away the old competent staff and then bringing in new staff who are not even technically competent to do and understand the electricity business added to the current situation that we have in Nigeria. Therefore, the idea that the principle of privatization had, which was good, became eluded by the new owners. Because it's a Nigerian system, they know it is a business that they can maneuver their ways. They get away with so many things. I remembered very well the funding of the power sector when the government was handling the business was just a paltry of what is being given. But right now that the business is privatized, the huge sums of money that given to the so-called privatized company is unbelievable. And then for some of us who have spent our lifetime establishing this viable electricity business, sometimes some of us, I'm not too sure, have had serious health challenges because we just can't bring ourselves to understand that this industry that we have built, we have spent our lifetime trying to develop, is allowed to just diminish over a period of time because leadership have changed from privatization to from government to privatization, and then privatization is less effective. Privatization is handled with impunity. Privatization is handled with, I don't care what happens, but the whole idea is the privatization comes with the rule, and then those rules are there. Why is the government not ensuring that the rules of privatization are supervised, are monitored, and then where necessary, the airing discos are checked? Nothing has happened. And then now, from what is happening, it looks like government is saying that they are going to bring consultant JICA from outside to come and manage a network that does not belong to them, a network that they had known nothing about, a network that they are not competent to manage. Where are we going? I don't think we're going anywhere. Power is supposed to be, all right, a utility that must be available to every Nigerian. Power is not the preserve of the rich or the very rich. Therefore, in Nigeria, power has now been classified for the very rich. In actual terms, Nigeria is in darkness. And I weep that Nigeria is in darkness because it's only when you are in band A that you will have electricity supply. If you are in any band outside band A, forget it. Nigeria is in darkness. Policy implementers, policy supervisors that are charged with the responsibility of ensuring that this crucial commodity is made available to Nigerians are not doing their job. And Nigeria is dying. Nigerians are dying. Businesses are folding up. Cost of living is going beyond the reach of everyone. It is affecting everybody. It is affecting every home. It is affecting every.
Yes, Mr. Mohammed, I'm sorry to interject here. Just quickly for us, before we escalate the conversation to our other guests, it would appear that you are absorbing the discourse, from any blame when you alluded to certain players being responsible for the failure of the privatization, therefore the failure of the discourse to perform. Who exactly are these players you're talking about? Can you be a bit more specific?
I mean, the regulators. The regulators are charged with the responsibility of ensuring that the performance bond signed by the new owners, are strictly abided by. And wherever there is a breach, we expect that that breach should be taken note of, and then lapses that is responsible or that were responsible for those breaches were addressed. I do know.
Well, we're sorry for that glitch. We hope that we'll get that sorted out and reconnect with Mr. Mohammed in our Kaduna studio. But again, let us also bring in other guests, of course, who are part of our conversation. Let me come to the studio and talk to Mr. Bonga. I don't understand. In 2013 thereabout, that was when the privatization was entered into with the discourse.
November 1st.
Exactly. And since then, government had taken several steps, to also, intervene, to incentivize the discourse, to enable them perform. You remember, the bailout, there was also the MAP, thing that government. So how are the regulators, according to Mr. Mohammed, responsible for the failure of the discourse to perform?
Well, thank you very much for that question. Like he said, the governance space, the regulatory space in the market, in fact, if anything is to be done, that is where they should begin with, right? In 2005, when the administration of President Obasanjo came up with this idea of privatizing the power sector, what were we told? That government does not have the three capacities, particularly the finances to run the power industry, right? And that they were looking out for investors who have the three C's. One, capacity, the financial capacity, managerial capacity, and the technical capacity. Nigeria went on a roadshow in major cities all over the world. 402 competent companies who had sector players with the resources paid $25,000 expression of interest form. But when they came down here, number one, there was no data. You recall that in Nigeria you have embassies with commercial desk officers here. So whatsoever you are doing here, they know it. And when some of them came in to conduct due diligence on the infrastructure and what we want to sell out to them, there was no data. That's problem number one. Majority of them pulled out. There was the issue of labor. Agitation. Should we do it? Should we not do it? Young men and women were taken from Nigeria to go to the best power institutions in the world, to train, to come and run the show. None of them, not one, found itself in the regulatory space. Rather, they were taken over by privatized entities. That takes me to the ownership, the investors, the ownership of the privatized entities. We are talking of the discourse. Who were the owners? Who took over? Were they qualified? Did they obtain it as a result of political patronage? or connections with the powers that be in government? Did they have the capacity, the financial capacity to man the sector? No. Even the acquisition capital, some of them, or majority, if not all of them, obtain loans from commercial banks. For instance, GMN DISCOS was valued at 169 million in 2013. 169 million.
Million is dollars.
Dollars.
Naira. Okay.
$169 million. Today, they are talking of privatizing, selling it at for $60 million. Number one, though they paid for the acquisition capital, they lacked the capital to invest thereafter. Meaning, you sign performance agreement that ATC and C that was about 47, 48% will come down. And that was the consideration. What is the ATC and what is ATC and C? Aggregate technical, commercial, and collection losses. Scale it down, your revenues will go up. If today, according to the last quarter report of NEC, ATC and C percentage losses is between 35 to 40%. What is the interpretation in a layman's language? For every 100 naira, you are losing 35 to 40 naira. You are only collecting the balance. And we are talking of liquidity in the market. Apart from what is going on there, one phrase or word that defines and describes what is going on in the power sector is lack of finances. The distribution companies are saddled with the responsibility to do what? To collect revenues for the rest of the operators in the value chain. But what happens? We began with a distrust. Okay, before the distrust, the DISCOs came on board and they had what they call legacy debts owed by the customers to the defunct NEPA and PSCN. They were collecting these monies. Nobody heard. Until when, after they exhausted those collections, we started hearing in 2015, 2016 of what? A drop in revenue collections. And various, like we cited, 701 billion in 2017 was made available as payment assurance guarantee fund to enable MBET. It was made available to Nigerian bulk electricity trader to enable them pay gas suppliers. And that was to cover between 2018, January 2019 to March 2020. Another 600 billion was made available because of what? Revenue shortfalls in the market. But the investors retain 60% equities. The federal government, 40% equities. Right. Even in the representation of the federal government in the boards of these privatized entities, it became an issue of politics. And those that could not represent the interest of Nigerians in this. DISCOs were on a free, some of them were collecting, selling electricity in Naira, paying themselves in dollars in this country until we blew the whistle. The mess in the sector is not about, see, like he said, this is overdue.
Let's look at the what you just mentioned, the fall in the revenue, the drop in the revenue. Now, what would you ascribe that? Because what is out there in the public domain is that the DISCOs were not interested, regardless of, the share of the equity. They were not interested in investing in the infrastructure, and that of course would have a ripple effect on their investment returns.
Okay, let me put it this way.
Yes.
You went to buy a second-hand Tokumbo car that had been driven and battered over the years. You pay the cost of what? The car as valued at the time of purchase. You need money, right? To go to the mechanic, replace certain parts, so that you can drive your car.
No, but they have been issued. It was expected that you will have the money to do that.
And because the selection process of those who invested eventually did not follow the due process. It was political patronage. I made a presentation to the Erufai Committee on ownership of privatized entities in Nigeria. Who are the owners? Who were the owners behind Abuja Disco, Port Harcourt Disco, Ikeja Disco, Iko Disco? Who were the owners? Can they unveil them? There were men and women in the society that were close to the government that had this, that had the opportunity. Core investors, people who had the resources, they don't have the space. We're not given the opportunity. So if you cannot now, you are talking of liquidity terms and revenue shortfalls. Now, a disco that is serious in the business of distribution of electricity must make sure you have the meter. The meter remains a revenue assurance tool in the electricity market. The meter measures electricity received and consumed, and electricity received and consumed. I have paid a certain amount of money, I think last week Friday, to AEDC in my prepaid meter. I'm on Bambi.
Mr. Wenga, I don't want us to go. I don't want us to go too back. You know, yes, too far back, because there's an objective. Yeah. There is a pilot, you know, effort now to reform the discourse, to get the discourse to do the right thing. So, from all that you've said, do you now? What would then be your impression about the efforts by the present, you know, leadership of the ministry to reform the discourse?
One, Fashola launched what is called, or relaunched what is called Power Sector Recovery Program in 2018. And in that document, most of the things, I believe, I have not seen the so-called overhaul, something they are talking about, are embedded in that document. Was it implemented? No. Electricity industry in Nigeria has become a huge laboratory for what? Testing ideas, untested ideas, experimentations that fail. I repeat, it's a huge laboratory for all manner of experimentations.
Okay. All right.
All manner of experimentation.
Mr. Bonga, all manner of experimentation. We'll come back to you. Let's bring in our other guest into this discussion as we go to our Kano studio where we have Engineer Umar Lawan. Engineer Lawan, I'm sure that you must have been listening to the conversation so far, and we're trying to examine the challenges, you know, facing electricity distribution in Nigeria. And some of the challenges that has been mentioned has been that the players are majorly responsible for the failure, and the change of ownership also escalated the challenge that we had. And we talked about the issue of the military metering gaps, you know, in the system. From your own perspective, what do you think is responsible for this challenge that we are having with the DISCO?
Much once more. You can see from the information coming out from the Federal Ministry of Power is that even though it's not adequately rebuilt, because the plan the federal government is having is imminent, is coming very soon. But part of the problem is that they are talking about governance gaps. And these governance gaps actually comes as a result of weak regulatory compliance first in the country across every level, especially at distribution level involving DISCOS in the country. You can see because the regulatory aspect is centralized aspect in the country and is headed by NEC, that is National Electricity Regulation Commission. As you know, when you are dealing with centralized system, there could be surfaces resurfaces of problems, especially at the lowest level, where the government is far away from the reality. So in other words, this is also part of the contributory reason for that weakness, which has led us to where we have found ourselves now. Thank God, the same government has also embarked on the implementation of 2023 Electricity Act, which is a popular National Electricity Act that allows states to create regulatory laws over DISCOS and other players in the states. I believe bringing regulatory body closer to DISCOS with good implementation strategy will really facilitate solving the problems on ground. For instance, you can see now NEC is dealing with about 36 states plus federal capital territory. You see the staff they have may not be adequately. I think they have less than 2,000 staff. So you see they have a limited capacity in that aspect. So I believe with coming out of this 2023 Electricity Act, actually that's part of the governance gaps may be cushioned. Also, they also discuss, thank God you have talked about issue of transition. It's also part of the problem, but there is also part of board independence. You see, most of this discourse, political interference is really working in their organizational structure. So now having this plan, what the federal government is introducing, actually will help and cushion those effects of political interference, because now the business is not going to be as usual. Now DISCOS are going to be held responsible for what they are doing. So actually this is part of the what is expected to come up. And thank God now the Electricity Act has started working. We can see out of the 36 states, we have now about 11 states have reached stage of asset delineation. So now the DISCOS, to be candid, are going to be faced with a double sort process. While federal government is calling for the unbundling along the state line, it's also calling for the regulation in the sector. It's also calling for more investment. It's also calling for private participation. The state will also have the same objectives. So you can see virtually the state and the federal government now are having brought at least almost same objectives toward DISCOS. So really DISCOS, they are really facing challenges which are eminent. And the only solution, I think, in my own opinion, is to really look at the advantages they have. Thank God the 2023 Electricity Act is coming up. The states are now electing laws. It's better to align with this recent policy and take advantage as a major player in the state, so that they can start to mitigate the problems faced or the problem mentioned by the federal government. Thank you.
All right. I just want us to be clear that there is, a fundamental, a good reason or good reasons, to look into the books of the DISCOS. And, so far, the responses that we've gotten, is, indicating that there are good grounds to look into the books of the performance of the DISCOS. And that is the point, the path that the Ministry of Power is taking. So let's bring in Bode Fadikpe. Bode Fadikpe, of course, is joining us via Zoom from Ijebu, and he's the CEO, Sage Consulting and Communications. Bode, if you're with us, let's again look at, the pilot overhauling project of the Ministry of Power. Now it's targeting, both internal, cleansing and external, the use of external experts. What, in your view, or how might these, help? Previous interventions, there have been previous interventions, and we've seen those interventions, the extent to which they worked. Now, what do you think of this mix?
Thank you so much. Good morning, Nigerians, and thank you for having me. I'd like to adopt, first and foremost, the position of other speakers in the studio. But based on the question you have asked me, I think the first thing we need to see here is that I'm a bit uncomfortable with the use of the word pilot. I'm a communications person, and I'm very conscious of words. Is this the first time that we are intervening in the power sector? Is this the first time that government is intervening since 2013, 2013 being the baseline? Is this the first time? This is not the first time. Let's take the most recent one, which is that of this Siemens project. What has become of the Siemens project? For me, what we are seeing, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but I just want to clarify that the pilot, according to the ministry, according to the minister, it's a pilot, that will be done on the discos, one from the north, one from the south. So it's not an intervention, that covers the whole of the discos, but just one from the north and one from the south. So probably after this stage, then, we will know whether to extend the whole intervention to all the discos. I just wanted to let that know. The pilot is not from us. That's how it is termed.
I understand it. I'm not operationalizing on that word from your own perspective, but from what the minister said when he said one from the south, one from the north. And I'm wondering, what is the essence of the pilot? I mean, are you saying that having done the pilot, then you go to other discos? That's number one. Does the federal government still have the authority to begin to query the discos as they are currently, given the fact that there is a new ownership? Yes, federal government has 40%, which is golden 40%, but can they walk into a disco and begin to restructure? For me, what we are seeing is another example of policy inconsistency in the power sector. And that has been one of the fundamental problems that the power sector has been having since 2013 when it was privatized. Federal government sold, the then federal government, and we must be very careful in drawing that line. The then federal government sold the power sector to those that it cannot look in the face and tell them off. Obong mentioned three factors: financial incapacity, managerial incapacity, technical incapacity. The fourth one is the political incapacity of the federal government to look at those that they sold the discos to and tell them that you are not performing. They cannot look them in the face because they all meet at different times in the night to discuss the power sector and take decisions that are not in tandem with what the power sector is supposed to achieve. Nigeria is now going back to JICA and asking JICA to come in. So come and do what? JICA wrote a report in 2019, 189 pages. JICA wrote another report in 2021, about 240 pages. What are they doing with those reports? What we are seeing currently is a situation where we'll bring back the Siemens approach. Manitoba did it in TCN. They failed, and Manitoba was driven away. Siemens started it. We can't see what Siemens has done. If there's rain today, is there any network that is going to survive the rain? So what are we talking about? As far as I'm concerned, this is just another opportunity. The power sector is the shop sector. This is just another opportunity to go ahead, and then next time we have another minister, that minister will go to India and they will bring India model again. By the time we remove that minister, another minister comes in, we'll go to which country is that again? Maybe we're already romancing China, we are romancing Japan, we have romanced India before. Which is the next country we are going to? Maybe we'll go to Australia. So as far as I'm concerned, there is nothing striking, there is nothing new, there is nothing exciting. It's not likely to produce any result. We are just jumping in one spot, a lot of motion without movement, as far as I'm concerned. There is nothing new to be said about the power sector that we have not said on NTA, whether on NTA 24, Good Morning Nigeria, or on any other station in this country that has not been said. Obang and myself are familiar faces. The former MD of Kaduna Electricity, who is also in the studio this morning, we are familiar faces. So what is the new thing that we want to say that government does not know about, that the current minister does not know about? I'm afraid there's nothing new to be said. Even you, the moderators of this program, you are more familiar with the power sector today than you were several years ago. So for me, they are talking about internal restructuring, external technical assistance, and then government regulation. This is an indictment on government itself. If government is saying we want to look at government regulation, this is an indictment on government itself. It means that government has not done as much as it ought to do. Because if by now, 10 years after, we are still thinking about inadequacy in government regulation, we are still talking about technical assistance. The former MP of Kaduna mentioned something that is striking. When the new owners came, they just took the baby and the bathwater, threw everybody away, forgetting that there is something called experience, whether in the power sector, whether in the finance sector, whether in the education sector, whether in the security sector. Every sector has its own quality of manpower that you cannot just take them, their legacy, experience, everything, and dump. Obang has never worked in the power sector. But if you take him out of the power sector today and you say you don't need this experience, you'll be killing a lot of information. Not to talk of those who have direct contact with the power sector, working day and night, doing so many things to make sure that there is. I must even praise those who are there right now. That we still have electricity in this country is a miracle. That we still have electricity is a miracle.
But I don't seem to get you. On one hand, you are, saying that the DISCOs are not performing. And indeed, if you look at that report that you referenced, the JICA report of 2019, which I have here with me, from the number of forced fault outages to long fault restoration lines to defective fault lines, I mean, the data of this performance, the mandatory performance benchmark on this area, it's not encouraging. It's not encouraging. So on the part of the DISCOs, there is need for some form of reform. And on the other hand, you are saying that the reform, the pilot or whatever intervention that the government wants to take, you're not optimistic about it. So what should be done? Should we just leave the status quo?
I'm not saying we should leave it the status quo. I'm saying that government must go beyond mere sloganeering. Government must move beyond that point. Who are the two DISCOs that government is proposing in the north and in the south? I mean, those who are close to the power sector can look at their crystal ball and they can tell you, but that's not the conversation this morning. I'm not in a position to mention which DISCO in the north or which DISCO in the south. Okay? But I'm saying that what government is about doing, government had done it before. It is obvious to the blind that the power sector is not performing, whether generation, transmission, distribution. It is just in percentage. The one that is more obvious to us is that of the distribution that is carrying the larger chunk of the inadequacy. Otherwise, if you do a stress test in the generation today, you will see gaps. Not to talk of transmission where the gaps are also as obvious, and then, of course, distribution. But what I'm saying is that government must go beyond mere rhetoric. What has happened to Siemens projects? To what extent has Siemens contributed? Why are we moving to Japan now? Why are we taking Japan so seriously now? What are the inadequacies we found with Siemens that is making us to go to Japan? Why are we not correcting the inadequacies in the Siemens project in Germany and then go and then make progress? Why do we now want to change? Now what we are going to have at the end of the day is a car that has Japanese parts, German parts, Indian parts, Australian parts, part from Canada, because we have dealt with Manitoba of Canada. We have dealt with Germany, Siemens. We are not going to Japan. By the time you assemble all these parts together and use it as one car, of course you and I can guess the performance of that car. So let government be consistent. Let government go beyond mere sloganeering. Let government develop the political will to do the things that he says he wants to do, and not all of this public relations work that we are doing.
Mr. Bode Fadipe, government needs to be more consistent, and and shy away from political interference in the electricity sector. All right, we have gotten some responses from our viewers, which we'll just read out now so that some of our guests can respond to them. This one says, good morning, Nigerians. The government didn't do due diligence before giving out license to the DISCOs during privatization process, as some of them lacks the technical know-how, the financial power to manage an entity of that magnitude. In some cases, there is no difference between the defunct NEPA. To improve on DISCO, government should review their mandate and previous agreements by activating better service clauses. This one is from Engineer Umayang from Jos. The only overflow topic in Nigeria today is electricity. Too much invested, too little result obtained. This is clearly a product of sabotage by few elements who are only Nigerians by name and not by heart. And this one is reforming the DISCO. The DISCO government had made a serious mistake due to their selfish interest. They could have sold it to companies that are in power energy, but they used the foreign investors to buy and lay them off after. They bought it by going to the bank to borrow. How can you borrow to improve a dying company? DISCO can only be made viable again with the following steps. Collect it from the politicians who use the experts to buy them and displaced. Motivate the staff. For the over 10 years, many of the staff have not been promoted. Be interested to invest in the industry. We should also remove politics out of power. Transparency of government, of both government and the operators, and so on and so forth. That is from Ajakai. Okay. Claire,
yes,
you have some?
Yes, I have. And incidentally, this is coming from Engineer Jude Ugoke. He's a metering and revenue protection expert. And I'm just going to read what he has sent to us. He says, it is unfortunate that we are where we are in terms of power supply in Nigeria. Sincerely, the distribution companies, DISCOs, are striving to achieve a stable power distribution. However, we continue to face challenges such as the cost-reflective tariff issue and rampant energy theft, which result in significant collection and commercial losses. Some DISCOs are funding metering initiatives in Nigeria, including those supported by the federal government, such as the MEF and MEP initiatives. However, I can authoritatively state that the rampant energy theft, coupled with the lack of requisite legislation to address this issue, is not only hindering the pace of meter installation, but also impacting revenue geometrically. Given these challenges, generating sufficient revenue to invest in distribution infrastructure has become a significant hurdle. Engineer Jude. This other one is from Alhaji Sikiru Oladepo Balogun. He's a consumer at Ile-Ife. He says, good morning, you are appreciated for this program. Please let the DISCO companies know that their workers are making consumers pay more than what they consume. The new meters being provided, consumers are reading excessively. The manufacturer should be contacted by the DISCO firm for revaluation of the meters. And I think this is very important. And I like to go to Kaduna studio where Mr. Mohammed is, former MD CEO Kaduna Electric. What do you think? Because this is a very fundamental question that Alhaji Sikiru Oladepo Balogun, who is a consumer at Ile-Ife, would want to know. He's saying that the meters that the DISCOs are providing now are running excessively. What are your thoughts? And yet we are saying that the DISCOs have no fault.
Claire, once again, good morning, Nigerians. The comments from various customers regarding issues affecting or militating against smooth improvement in distribution services are quite true, especially with the one of Sikiru, who specifically is talking about the quality of metering that we have at the moment in the industry or in the country. By and large, I think it will not be wrong to assume that a customer is interested in the quality of service he receives from the DISCOs. If a customer is saying that his new meter is speeding up, it means that he is conscious of the quality of meter that is being supplied with. If, on the other hand, the service provider, the DISCOs, or the owners are behind the supplies of those quality of meters, I think they should be morally upright and then know that there is God. If there is no one else, there is God. And then you can only cheat a customer to a certain point. But there is the day of retribution. And that day of retribution will affect everyone. The DISCO owners, the staff, and everyone. But I think fundamentally, moving away from that.
Mr. Mohammed, just hold your thoughts. Please just hold your thoughts. When we come back, you continue. We'd just like to take a very short break. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Please don't go away. All right, thank you for joining us again. And this is Good Morning Nigeria. Please keep your comments coming in. Before we went on break, Mohammed from Kaduna studio was, of course, responding to my questions, or to the question raised by, Sikiru from Ile-Ife. Please, Mr. Mohammed, you can go on now.
Quality of metering certainly is a big issue in the industry. And then the owners should please know, and they should be conscientious to know that customers know what they are getting. They know what they expect. And then, therefore, they are very particular about the quality of service that they receive. But let me say that Bode and I have spoken in this place with Claire and her colleague, and then Obot. They have said that the issue of policy inconsistency is the major problem that we have in Nigeria. The Ministry of Power that is actually charged with the responsibility of ensuring that policies that will improve power supply, distribution, transmission, and generation, they are working entirely out of the box. We say we like to think all right, we'd like to think outside the box, but they are operating right inside the box. So by and large, what I'm trying to say is that the ministry is not actually consulting with the right professionals that will give them advices that will add value to the quality of power supply in Nigeria. You can see from all indications that the issue of tariff was a big issue. It was done independently without consultation. If there are consultations, we need to have evidences. Now the issue of JICA that would champion the cause of improving distribution services in Nigeria is also an issue. Bode mentioned about the Siemens agreement. The Siemens agreement. Why is no one talking about the Siemens agreement? I don't think that this Siemens agreement is is not a good option, because Siemens agreement has worked in other regions of the world, and that is why it is actually a model. And then Nigeria should actually look at the way of implementing it, the way it is implemented in other countries. But behind it all is people are managing those relationships, and those people who are managing those relationships are the same people that are actually working together with the people who are supposed to be in charge of ensuring that policies work. Policies will normally work when there is fairness. Policies will work when there is transparency. Policies will work when there is consultation. And once all of these are not put together and managed properly, then we will still be moving around the same cycle with no result. Actually, it is so devastating at the moment that power is not available to the poor. The middlemen, like I said, there is no more middlemen. And then the rich, even the rich cannot afford electricity at the moment. It's only the extremely rich that can afford electricity, that can afford to be in Band B. It's so terrific. It's so unfortunate that things are not working, and then they are not working because policy inconsistency that needs to drive the entire industry is missing. Policy inconsistency that is supposed to be the prime motive of governance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed. The rich also cry. We are all crying here because it affects everyone. Well, policy inconsistency, wrong implementation of the policies as well. We have more responses from our viewers, which probably Mr. Obonga will just respond to. Let me just take these two. This one says, good morning. It is from Festus from Cross River. Said, good morning, NTA, and your question and your guest in the studio. It seems government is not ready. Let's tell ourselves the truth for once. For all things, how can we be talking of electricity now? Is a shame. Let every state or sort out for their electricity and leave government alone. That's Festus from Cross River. And this one's Engineer Olayinka Olatunde, Subset Energy Lagos, says, good morning. Why must we depend only on national grid? We have several means to generate lights to different regions and states, e.g. through sun, iron rod, spark plug, etc. Until we realize this, I doubt our seriousness as a nation.
Okay.
And
That's Engineer Olayinka.
Olayinka Olatunde, yes.
Okay. So this one is coming from Abubakar from Port Harcourt and Elelewon, and he says, we buy 4 units for 1,000 naira. Mm-hmm. Are those people in your studio aware? Because none of them is talking about this. And some places like Akbajo, also in Port Harcourt, people are buying 24 units for 1,000 naira. What is happening? Mr. Oket, I think this is your area.
I think they are aware. I think that's why Mr. Mohammed
Yes.
said there is God. Though.
Yes, but let Mr.
Okay, thank you very much. On the issue of buying, let us begin from there. The issue of buying 4 units
for 1,000.
For 1,000 naira.
In
in some places, 24 units for 1,000.
And that area is on Band A. In other words, he is paying 209 naira 50 kobo per unit. And now when you calculate 7.5% VAT, the 7.5% VAT that is added raises it from 209 naira 50 kobo to 225 naira per unit.
So that's what he's paying.
That is what he's paying. Now the fellow that he pays
in
Akbajo pays
buys 24 units at 1,000.
He's either Band C.
And that is Band C or Band D.
Band D, yes. You can see the difference. The difference between Band C here, Band B rather, is about 63 naira. Band B. Now Band A is 225 naira.
But he gets electricity constantly.
Now the philosophy, if I may use that language, behind the service-based tariff that introduced these tariff bands is that Band A are entitled to a minimum of 20 hours of supply. Band B, 16. Coming down to Band C, 12 hours. Band D, 8 hours. Band E, if it exists, 4 hours. But the question is that who measures it? And at what point? Then the regulator will tell you, oh, we are measuring it with technology at the feeder level. Let me cite an example. There is a feeder in Abakaliki, capital of Ebonyi State, a feeder that serves 3 local governments in Cross River, a distance of not less than 85 kilometers. So from the feeder to the transformers and the customers, If anything happens, whoa. So you don't measure hours of supply at the feeder, because between the feeder and the consumers, there's a distance, and in some cases, huge distance. Here, Sun City, the feeder that serves Sun City is at Kokwaba, up to Sunnyvale and that axis, which is over 5 or 7 kilometers. So what happens in between? So the point at which you measure hours of supply is at the customer end. So this is the area, the inconsistencies we are looking at. Now we talked about metering. What is a meter? A meter is a device that is, programmed, like they say in computing, is it giggle in or something out? Put in something, what you put in is what you get.
Garbage in, garbage
Garbage in, garbage out. Right. Now, a meter can be manipulated, can be programmed. Like somebody said, I had a report here in the Garki village where a lady, 5,000 naira is swallowed within a day. Just a shop, nothing. A shop, a cosmetic shop, nothing. No machines there, nothing. 5,000 naira, 2 days it goes. So, but what is the reasons, what are the probable reasons behind this? Number one, the DISCOs now are using what they call automated meter reader, AMR. They don't need to come to your house, particularly for postpaid meters, to read your meter, though it is provided for. Now, we are aware that some DISCOs reprogrammed, they take the meter for certification, go to NEMSA, Nigeria Electricity Management Services Agency, that satisfies the meters before they put. But when they take 1 or 2 or 3 meters for certification, they come in. NEMSA is not there for reprogramming. So we are aware that some DISCOs, they reprogram the meter to read 250 watts for 1 kilowatt hour. I confronted a professor.
Who are these DISCOs? Because we need to. No, because we need to. Who are these DISCOs?
Let me come. When we had this some time ago, here in the AEDC, I called a professor from Futo, who is an expert in metering. I said, is it possible? He said, 100% possible. Because a meter can be programmed. What did the young man do? He went there with a laptop to reprogram the meter. So that for every 1 kilowatt, which is 1,000 watts, the meter could be reading 250 for 1. So that for each kilowatt, you are making 4 extra 3. So this is it. When we raised their land, they quickly went and stopped it. It is possible for the meter. We are talking of Nigerians. And also, this is not the only area. There's what is called Green Park. Green Park.
What's Green
What
Park?
is Green Park?
What's Green Park?
Green Park is simply padding. It began in the days of NEPA and NITE. Oh, they look at Madame Clay. She's a big woman on NTA. She has money. So if there's revenue shortfall,
that's true.
Yeah, they push, they push some unit. Excel Hotel in former FEMA here. AEDC was padding their units by 12,000. 12,000 in a month. I investigated it. I conducted energy consumption audit on 120 hotels in Abuja, so I know what I'm talking. I'm not speculating, and I have the record.
So these are the reasons why. These are the reasons why.
Now Green Park is, particularly, it affects MD customers. MD customers. Your meter has raised so number of units. Example: Hotel de Bentley in Utako here, that was given a bill of 5.7 million naira. I was doing a program in Calabar when they called, and when we came in there, we discovered that something went wrong, not on the meter, by the meter readers who went there. And I took out almost 50% of that money after thorough investigations. So there are manipulations. They pad units. As we speak, 30 hotels in Abuja, here, they had their bills padded to the tune of 279 million naira, 30 hotels. I have the records. I have it here. Under Green Park, padding of units. Padding of units.
How do we solve this challenge?
So that is where we now, apart from that padding of units, most of them equally bill customers outside approved tariff rates. It happened. I'm an energy consultant, consumption consultant. And I'm not talking based on what I read. I'm telling you, if you challenge me, I'll show you the facts. Now, apart from that, for non-ND customers, there's a regulation that is called capping of estimated bills. Now, a DISCO Abuja here, I think was fined about 600 million. And they are still doing it. For instance, the last time I was here, I revealed to the world that somewhere a customer under band a widow woman with 4 children living in 2 mud houses, they gave her a bill of 326,000. And when she cried, I went there, looked at it. If you compute everything that was in that house, the highest that woman should pay, if she is given 24/7 in a month, is 21,000 naira. But she was given 300-something thousand naira. Why? Because they, instead of using 360 units approved for that feeder for that month, the DISCO used 1,403 units.
Mr. Gwenga, thank you. And I think these are some of the
things.
These are some of the reasons why the federal government has come out to say, look, it will no longer fold its arms and watch all of these inconsistencies, and there is God matter to continue to exist. And that's why he had said, look, we are going to reform this this aspect of the DISCOs in 2 ways. We're going to look at internal reforms, and then we are going to inject the external reforms, which is via JICA and all that. But my question I want to ask Engineer Abdurrahman Umar Lawan, who is in the Kano studio, is the role of the Regulatory Commission, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, and NBET. What should be the role of these 2 entities within this new framework of reforms?
You see, when you are talking about NEC, that is National Electricity Regulation Commission, in this coming reform, as I said earlier, their role from one aspect is going to be reduced or limited. Because if you could remember, at the same time, the same federal government deregulated the sector of electricity in the country, starting from the generation, distribution, and transmission sector. For me, I cannot categorically look at it as a policy inconsistency. Rather, I will look at it as a policy progress. The reason I say that is the fact that, previously, if you look at the generation aspect, was almost owned throughout by the government, and the transmission line was also monopolized by the government. But now that all companies are coming on board, there's much more possibility that we are going to see positive results, just as the case of financial banking sector. You could see, if you could remember 20 years ago, before the regulation of the sector, there was so much problems in the sector. But now we can look at it after 20 years and say, yes, we have development in the banking sector. We have multiple banks competing against each other. There's a relatively fair playing ground for the competitors or the banks to really operate on. That which has really led to efficiency in the sector. So the same thing applies to the electricity sector. I don't see it as a policy inconsistency. Rather, I see it as a policy progress. Now that the sector is being deregulated, of course, the role of MBET and the role of NEC will be limited, especially in the states that have already enacted those laws, and these coming DISCOs are also operating in such states. So you can see, but on the other hand, I could remember even the next role is being reviewed from the recent 2023 Electricity Act, which a lot of people are not looking at it. It's a very big milestone in the electricity sector. And with that policy, this common policy that is coming from the federal government, it means we'll be having parallel policies going on, which may likely improve the sector. I'm so optimistic. Even though, as you said, the state government will be having their own state law, which eventually will give them a chance to create their respective state regulatory body. Meaning the problem now is not going to be a central government problem as an exclusive problem. Rather, it will be a multi-tier problem where the federal government, the state government, and even the local government will be partaking. As well, when you have 3 tiers of government, definitely the role will be distributed accordingly. But on the other hand, I'm calling on the government, especially the federal government, shouldn't be carried out by the implementation of 2023 Electricity Act to leave the burden on the state government. Of course, power sector problem has been a decade problem or multi-decade problem that needs, there is a huge investment deficit. So on the other hand, please, the federal government should also keep on doing. For me, bringing Japan after bringing Siemens from Germany is not a problem. Of course, nowadays one has to look for investment. The investment is not a small investment. I'm also calling on the discourse, the state, and also to look outside the box, to look for international funding regarding the investment of the sector. So that's it.
Much, Engineer Umar there. Okay, let's bring in Mr. Bode Fadigbe. I want you to just, because of our time, I want you to just want to have your take on the fact that the World Bank is calling on the federal government, to remove electricity subsidy. What's your take on that?
Whether the World Bank gives the federal government that advice or not, is obvious that the government cannot sustain the continual use of subsidy as an instrument to assuage the liquidity challenge in the power sector, because government does not have all of that resources to itself. So for me, it's an inevitable situation that we must begin to cognizance of and prepare for it. I know that in the last couple of weeks, there has been conversations around adjustment of the tariff and coming from the Honorable Minister of Power. We don't know who is going to be affected, whether band A is going to be affected again, or it's going to be band B, C, E, and D that are going to be affected this time around, because in the last adjustment, they were not affected. It was band A alone. But at the end of the day, the major issue, the central issue for me is the achievement of a power sector that can deliver on its mandate. As much as we feel very uncomfortable with several steps and missteps that have been taken, the question remains, how can Nigeria become sufficient in electricity? A report came out some few days ago, or about a week or two ago, saying that Nigeria is the number 1 country in the world where you have the largest number of those who don't have access to electricity. Number 1 country in the world where you have the largest number of those who don't have access to electricity. And we have been struggling with this issue for a while in this country. Even before privatization, we have been struggling with availability of electricity. After privatization, when we thought that we had gotten the solution to the problem, we have not moved too far away from that point in 2013. We speak today.
Mr. Bode, we do apologize. We've actually, we've run out of time. We'd just like to get the response of, Mohammed Idris in just 30 seconds. Where do we go from here? Mr. Mohammed, how can we make this reform work? In 60 seconds, if you may, please.
if you are driving a car, or if you own a car and it's Mercedes, you have to go to a Mercedes to get the best maintenance for your car. So, and the same applies to the service industry, like the power sector. Moving away, the policy inconsistency must be addressed. And that is the only way that we can move forward and ensure that to a reasonable extent we are able to make a breakthrough in improving power supply in Nigeria.
Mr. Mohammed, the policy issue must be addressed, consistency in policy. In 30 seconds, Mr. Obong, 30 seconds.
I don't agree with what the minister is proposing. There are a lot of documents, written papers on how to. Let's revisit the 2018 relaunched Power Sector Recovery Program, which the World Bank made. Secondly, we are talking of subsidy and no subsidy. The federal government has 40% equities in all the gas companies operating in Nigeria. If we are talking of another tariff review and increase, I have said it repeatedly, it is hypothetical, it is not a silver bullet. What should the federal government do quickly? The federal government can give up that 40%. If it gives up that 40%, freeze it, and maybe shift it to a GENCOs, tariff will come down.
Mr. Okat, Obama, thank you. Executive Secretary, Power Consumers Advocates of Nigeria, we'd like to thank you. We'd also like to thank Idris Mohammed, Power Infrastructure Expert, former MD CEO, Kaduna Electric. Bode Fadikwe, CEO Sage Consulting, joined us from Ijebu via Zoom, and engineer Abdurrahman Umar Lawan, Senior Academic Department of Electrical and Senior Fellow, also joined us. Thank you all for your contributions to Good Morning Nigeria today. And that's it. I am Claire Adilabu Abdurazak.
And I'm Ademola Adeoye. Thanks for joining us. Join us again tomorrow for another interesting episode.